What's up, everybody? Hockey Time here, back again with another edition of the NHL Power Rankings. We had a pretty busy week here, a lot of kind of weird stuff going on, some really high scoring games, some guys scoring hat tricks, 4 goals. Pretty wild week, but right at the beginning here, we don't have too much change with number 32 being the Anaheim Ducks. The Ducks 1-9 in their last 10. They go 0-3 this past week, so not really too much discussion on these guys here. Everything really going wrong for them. So for the indefinite future, really, they're going to be at 32nd. I don't see teams like Chicago, Columbus, San Jose, any of these really bottom feeder teams dropping below them unless they turn it around pretty quickly. So 32 is Anaheim, 31 is Chicago once again. They are 1-3 this week, 3-6-1 in their last 10. Kind of the same issues they've been having all season, just not a lot of consistency when it comes to goal scoring. Their goaltending once again just not really doing quite enough to get them wins. They had a bit of a tougher schedule. I mean, some teams that were beatable, but some other teams they just don't have chances against, and those games are obviously very tough for them. So they remain at 31 again. Similar to the Ducks, they're going to need a really, really harsh turnaround in order to climb this list. Very much so for now, they remain at 31. Number 30 dropping a spot. They didn't have a bad week. They went 1-1, but it's the Columbus Blue Jackets. They're 4-5-1 in their last 10. They have been putting in better efforts lately, but the results just not quite there enough to move them really up this list from where they were last week at 29. Merzlikins has been better, but still a bit inconsistent at times. He has some games where he faces close to 50 shots and stops 45 plus. He has other games where faces not too many shots and doesn't look all that great. The good news for Columbus is that Jet Greaves in the games he's played has looked pretty good, so that's a promising young player for them. We'll see if he can keep his consistency up as well. That seems to be the biggest issue for most players on this team, but we'll see. Of course, the biggest news this week is that Patrick Line is going to be out for a good bit of time, so a relatively big loss for the Blue Jackets. He has not been one of their better players this season, but is kind of expected to be that. So, number 29, moving up a spot, is Seattle. Seattle went 2-1-1 this week. They're 2-6-2 in their last 10, though, and just really the same problems they've been having all year as well. The goal scoring not there for them. They pounded Chicago 7-1 this week, and while that is all well and good, Matty Beniers didn't get a point. So there's guys on this team that are expected to be leaders, and I know Beniers is young, but like guys like that are the guys that you really need to produce. And again, it's hard to complain about a 7-1 win, but in those games, you'd like to see your leaders, especially your scoring leaders, produce. So it's kind of hard to see them win that game without him getting a point. He's one of those guys that they really need to get going if they want to see any chance at a playoff berth. But the further we go along in the season with them this low on the list, the less and less likely that is. So they move up one spot this week. We'll see if they can continue it next week. But again, 2-6-2 in their last 10 is not all that promising. At number 28, dropping 5 spots, is Calgary. They go 0-2-2 on the week, 3-7, or excuse me, 3-5-2 in their last 10. It's weird. This team is just like they're so hot and cold. They have some stretches where they look really good, and then they play a patch of 5 or 6 games where they really don't play all that well, and that's where they're at right now. Again, 0-2-2 on the week. The 2 overtime points are nice, but you got to start getting victories if you want to climb back up these specific standings. I think, at one point it climbed all the way up to fourth, but now, of course, Edmonton being as hot as they are, they've taken over that fourth seed, and really Vancouver, Vegas, and LA are not looking to fall off by any means. They've all been very, very good the entire year. So Calgary and Edmonton both have some work to do, but Calgary in particular needs to find some consistency in their results in order to get back in the playoffs. But right now, it's really not looking too hot for them. No pun intended. Number 27, dropping 3 spots, and I was looking at dropping this team more, but it's the Ottawa Senators. They go 1-3 this week. They're 3-7-0 in their last 10, and just a full 60 minutes is like impossible to come by for this team. I mean, that game last night against Dallas is a perfect example of it. They have a 4-2 lead, throw it away. Anton Forsberg does not look good in that effort. Their goaltending continues to be an issue. The more that these two play, the more, especially Korpisalo's contract really does not look all that good, but they need something to happen in net to fix this because the scoring hasn't been absent for this team. They're scoring an all right amount of goals. They're not great, but it's not like they're going goalless or 1 or 2 goals a game every single game like a team like Seattle is. They're getting the goals, they're just not getting the goaltending, and part of that's because they're not putting in a full 60-minute effort. So they have to figure that out. Until they do, they're going to continue dropping on this list, which is disappointing because this is a team that was expected to have, again, either playoff expectations or to be right there in the thick of it at the end of the year. And right now, they're just not at that spot. Number 26, jumping up one spot, largely in thanks to these previous 2 teams being so poor this week, is San Jose. 1-1-1 on the week. They are 6-3-1 in their last 10. One of the better last 10 records of any team in the league, which is kind of incredible considering the roster they have on paper. But they've been pretty decent lately. Again, 1-1-1 for San Jose. You can't complain about that, I guess, unless you're a Sharks fan. You want them to probably be losing more games. They're not even last in their division anymore, never mind last in the league. But they've been good lately. The effort's been there. The goaltending's improved. Kaapo Kähkönen, who was unplayable to start the year, has been very good lately. Mackenzie Blackwood continues to have games where he just steals the show. It's really just a matter of whether or not they decide to score or not on any given night that makes them competitive. In the past 10 games, especially, but this week they were pretty competitive in that aspect. Number 25, the same spot they were in last week, is Montreal. Montreal, kind of the same story they've been all year. I really like having them at this 25 spot. I know it's kind of boring not seeing them move, but um, I think it just kind of fits where they're at as a team. I think they're not, the basement of the league, but they're not good enough to make the playoffs. They're interesting in pretty much every game they play, but they just don't have the talent, the depth, the consistency to climb this ranking. So as much as it's weird to say it, I'm kind of happy with them at 25, not from the aspect that I don't want to see them succeed, but I think this is kind of where they belong. So I'm happy with Montreal at 25. At number 24, moving up 4 spots, again, largely thanks to some of the teams behind them, is Buffalo. Buffalo this week, 2-1-1. They're 4-5-1 in their last 10. The efforts have been a little bit better. They really just need to find the consistency. And Devin Levi has looked better since being called up from Rochester, which is good. I still don't know that he's completely ready to take on that full starting role again. Very, very small sample size in that time since he's gotten called up from Rochester. UPL has kind of dropped off a bit. He was playing very well earlier in the year. Now has kind of come back to earth around where maybe he's expected to be playing. So, nonetheless, though, the results for Buffalo have been better. They do move up 4 spots. Again, a couple teams behind them dropping pretty significantly. Some other teams stagnating. So they're above 500. They climb up. Kind of just the way the cookie crumbles this week for them. Number 23, dropping 2 spots, is St. Louis. The Blues are 1-2 on the week, 4-6-0 in their last 10. Of course, firing Craig Berube after their loss to Detroit. They take on, I'm blanking on who it was later in the week, but I think it was a 4-2 victory for them. The whole situation with Jordan Kyrou getting booed every time he touched the puck. It's just really, really tough scenes right now in St. Louis, a team that really wasn't playing terribly. Obviously, they went on that 4 or 5 game losing skid, but that happens from time to time. I don't know. I personally wasn't a huge fan of that firing, but nonetheless, happens. So, um, they're looking to rebound from that little slump. They get their most recent win here, which is good, but they've got a way to go now. They were looking pretty good at a shot at a wild card spot in the Central for a bit there, but now they have some catching up to do, specifically with some other teams in the West improving quite a bit. So for now, they're 23. Hopefully, they can rebound a bit. They did get bailed out by that win because they would have otherwise dropped quite a bit further than just 23, but for now, that is where they sit. Number 22, jumping 4 spots, going 2-0 on the week, is Minnesota. Minnesota 6-4-0 in their last 10. 2-0 on the week isn't incredible, but you got to win the games you're faced with, and that's exactly what they did. Gustafsson has started to look better, which is one of the most important things for them. The scoring from their big guys has improved. They're still looking for a little more from Kaprizov in particular, but Boldy's been very good lately. Rossi continues to be one of the better rookies in the league this year. It's just all kind of coming together for the Wild. Again, much like the Blues, they have a good bit of ground to cover. Their record's still pretty bad as a whole, but definitely headed in the right direction for them. Number 21, dropping 5 spots, 1-3 on the week and 6-4 in their last 10, is Arizona. The last 10 games is not bad, but 1-3 on the week is tough. And some of the teams in front of them just improved a bit more. So 21 for Arizona. They, again, much like teams like Calgary, just battling some inconsistency. Their goaltending has still been good. Again, Connor Ingram for Vezina is definitely still a conversation to be had. But the results for the team as a whole just not really there this week. So they do bump down a couple spots to number 21, but overall not overly concerned about them. Number 20, this team went 2-0 on the week, but because of some of the teams ahead of them, they did not move up any spots. So that's Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh needed these wins badly. They are 4-3-3 in their last 10, despite the 2-0 week this past week. Better efforts from this team was really all that Penguins fans were probably asking for, and they definitely got it. But they need this, again, on a more consistent basis. The Metro is turning out to be one of the more competitive divisions in the league, which I don't really think we expected too much. I think divisions like the Atlantic and the Central were probably the two that were kind of more up in the air as far as who's going to make it. You could even make an argument that the Pacific was probably going to be more filled with parity than the Metro was. I think early in the year it was the Rangers, the Hurricanes, and the Devils that were expected to be the three teams, and teams like Philly and the Islanders were really not expected to be quite there. But they're all in the mix now, and the Penguins struggling means that that's just a couple more teams they got to climb ahead of. So it's a really, really tough division to be in. And again, this middle of the pack here in these rankings is kind of filled with teams that are all performing relatively well, or some top end teams that have started to tumble back. So tough to climb these ranks, but for now, they're 2-0. If they continue next week, they will definitely jump, but just because of some of the teams in front of them, they do stay at number 20. Number 19, jumping three spots, is Washington. This team's record much better than that of Pittsburgh. 2-0-1 on the week, 4-4-2 in their last 10. So same number of wins and losses, but a couple extra points in there. And again, just much higher overall on the standings than the Penguins are. I still don't love the eye test for this Caps team. Again, I watch them a lot more than I watch some of these other teams just because they are my team. But they still find a way to get outshot so heavily in a lot of their games, but the goaltending's been good and the results are still there. So it's hard to deny that, but I still, despite their record, just don't love what I'm seeing from them. And that's part of why they're in this third row at number 19 versus somewhere in the second row, maybe between like 12 and 16, where their record may indicate that they should be. But nonetheless, Caps at 19 for this week. We will see if they can continue to climb. Number 18, dropping 7 spots. I believe this is the biggest movement overall, but by far the biggest drop on the board is Detroit. They go 1-3 on the week, 5-4-1 in their last 10. It just hasn't really been there for them since this Patrick Kane trade. I don't know how much that's really on his shoulders. Obviously, it's one guy versus a whole team. You can't really blame it all on him, of course, but 1-3 on a week is tough, especially those 4 game weeks when you have an opportunity to collect 8 points. You only get two. That's hard. I know they, again, in a very competitive division. The East in general has just been much more competitive than the West has, but nonetheless, in that scenario, you have to continue to collect points, and Detroit did not do that this week. Their record kind of dictates that too. They're just above 500 in their last 10, and when that's the case, there's going to be teams passing you, and that's exactly what happened this week. So they do bump down to 18. A little bit concerned just because consistency was one of the worries for this team, both offensively and defensively, and then of course in net leading into the season. And we're kind of starting to see that become an issue for them. So we'll see if they can rebound, continue to find that consistency they had early in the year. But for now, they do fall to 18. Number 17, jumping a spot to 1-1 on the week, is Carolina. They are 4-4-2 in their last 10. So again, just about 500 for them. But for a team that had really, really high expectations, I'm very surprised that they're still struggling as much as they are. The goaltending has been brutal for them. It's been the same thing for the last probably 4 or 5 weeks since Freddie Anderson's been hurt. The greatest example of that is that most recent game against Nashville, where neither team's goaltending was particularly good, but especially that overtime goal that Antti Raanta gives up. It's like it hits him in like the hip or the waist and like just finds a way through. I know it's a clean shot from the slot from a very good player in Philip Forsberg, but you need a save there, especially in overtime when you have an opportunity to collect that second point in a division that is hyper competitive right now. So just tough to see that from the Hurricanes. But despite the frustration I have with their goaltending, they do still jump a spot from 18 to 17. Number 16, dropping a spot. And this one might be controversial. I'm actually just going to throw both teams on there. So 16, dropping a spot, is Tampa Bay. 15, jumping 2 spots, is Edmonton. Now, those of you in the comments are probably going to be down my neck about Tampa just beat the crap out of Edmonton. Why are they below them? Let's look at the stats here. So both teams 2-1 this week. In their last 10, Tampa Bay is 4-6-0. Edmonton is 8-2-0. This team has been flying up these rankings since the coaching change. McDavid has been activated. Draisaitl has continued to be consistent. Evan Bouchard putting up more points. Darnell Nurse, Zach Hyman had a fantastic week. Evander Kane still plugging along, putting points in where needed. And of course, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins still doing his thing. The biggest thing, especially in that Tampa Bay game, was that Stuart Skinner did not play very good. That was one of the bigger eggs he's laid since the coaching changes. But I just feel that overall, the way that these two teams have been playing, despite the records being identical, and that one of Tampa's wins came over Edmonton, Edmonton has still been the better team as of late. Vasi for Tampa has not been the world beater that we expect him to be. And again, I know he's coming off of a surgery, so kind of unfair to expect him to be that good right out of the gate. But we're a couple weeks into him being back now, so I do expect him to kind of warm up to things a bit more. He was, of course, fantastic in the game against Edmonton, stopping like 54 of 57 or something just unbelievable. But nonetheless, I just feel the Oilers have been a bit better than Tampa Bay lately. Both these teams, I think, are going to be fine. They're both going to end up in a playoff spot, I'm hoping, but I do have Edmonton just a tad above them for now at 15 and Tampa at 16. Number 14, team jumping 5 spots. They've been unreal lately as well, and that's the New York Islanders. This team 3-0-1 on the week, 6-1-3 in their last 10. So 9 out of their last 10 games, they have collected at least a point. This team is like the overtime point merchant. Their record as a whole, I think, is 14 and 15 if you just go wins and losses. But if you split the NHL record, it's like 8, 7, and 8 or something. Like they have 8 overtime losses, 8 extra points they would not have otherwise gotten. So their record, despite as a whole not being all that great, they've lost more than they've won. Their record's pretty good, and this week, of course, they churn out 3 wins plus the 1 overtime loss. Sorokin is back. Varlamov still playing very well. The scoring, which has to kind of come in bunches from this team from a lot of guys, has been happening lately. They don't have one standout player that's going to really pile on the points, like a player like McDavid or Kucherov. Um, but they've been getting it as a group lately, and the goaltending's been unreal. So that's, the two recipes for success for the Islanders. They've been finding that lately. For that reason, they jump a bunch of spots to number 14. Number 13, not moving at all this week, is Philadelphia. They go 2-0-1 on the week, 6-2-2 in their last 10. This stretch of teams from 13 through like 7 was very, very hard for me to rank because they all had pretty good weeks, and it was really hard for me to determine where I thought everyone was. But I think it's fair to have Philly at 13. Again, the goaltending's been great for them. Pretty similar to the Islanders, to be honest. They need their goaltending to be good, and they need to get scoring from a number of players. Aside from maybe Travis Konechny, there's not any other guys on this team that are going above and beyond and putting on a ton of points that you wouldn't otherwise expect them to be doing. And that's been the case for Philly so far. Again, a hard-nosed team under Torts, it's always going to be the case. So good to see that from them. If their record continues to be this good, they will move up eventually, but they're also going to need some help from the teams above them to slide a bit. So this week they stay at 13. We'll see if they're able to jump next week. Number 12, jumping 2 spots. And again, this is where maybe a bit controversial, but I do like what I've seen from Jersey a bit more lately than what I've seen from Philly. The goaltending has been better lately. That's the biggest thing for the Devils. The scoring's always been there for them, but the goaltending between Akira Schmidt and Vitek Vanacek has just not been that great. This past week, it was much better from both of them. And in some cases, it's been Akira's had a good week. Vitek's had a bad week, or vice versa this week. They both played pretty well, even in the losing effort. So, huge news for the Devils. If they can keep that up, this team's going to be fine. That's the big if, though. Both of these guys are not exactly notorious for having long stretches of consistent, solid play. So we'll see if they can keep that up. For now, I have them 12. A bit hesitant to move them up too much because of that goaltending concern, but they have been good lately. Again, 2-1 this week, 7-3 in their last 10. Number 11, this one was hard too. They move up just 1 spot despite a 3-1 record on the week and also 7-3 in their last 10, and that's Nashville. This team has been unreal lately. Again, a roster on paper that I've told you guys all year I really don't like the way it's composed, but they've been hard to deny, man. The goaltending's been much better. Again, UC Saros is the key to this team's success, and he has been playing like UC Saros lately, and their record reflects that very well. 7-3 in their last 10 again. Um, but they're winning games by scoring like a bunch of goals. Like again, neither goalie was good in that Carolina game, but 6 goals against Carolina is not a small feat. That's still a team that has a ton of depth, is supposed to be very good defensively. Haven't been great this year, but Nashville has been impressive. They've been fun to watch. They're scoring a bunch. Similar to the Islanders, aside from Forsberg and Ryan O'Reilly playing very, very well, they've got a bunch of guys scoring. The defensemen are chipping in, so fun to watch Nashville right now. Kind of hoping to see them continue to climb, but right now they fall at number 11, jumping a spot from last week. And number 10, another kind of weird one. They're 2-1 on the week, 5-3-2 in their last 10, but they dropped 2 spots, so it's Colorado. The Avs have been all right lately. I love that Jared Bednar has been willing to play Ivan Prosvetov more. Georgiev has not been all that great. They've needed to make sure that they're collecting the points where they can, and Prosvetov's been giving them the chance to do that. So he's been getting the playing time, and I think that's deserved. I think it's the right call to make. Um, they are a bit more inconsistent than some of these other top teams, which is not unusual for the Avs. They tend to be kind of a streaky team, but I still think they're going to be just fine. McKinnon's been heating up lately. Ever since the comments that Arturi Lekkonen's dad made about Mikko Rantanen, he has been just tearing the league up, catching everyone on fire. So good stuff there from the Avs. Not overly concerned about them, but essentially 5-5 in their last 10. Despite the 2-1 record on the week, I do have them dropping 2 spots. At number 9, jumping 1 spot, they go 2-0-2 on the week, 5-1-4 in their last 10. So very similar to the Islanders is Toronto. His team has been all right without Joseph Wolf. Samsonov has not looked great in the starts he's had, but Martin Jones got to win for them this week. Samsonov gave them a chance to win at the end of it in that Columbus game, but just not quite enough to get the W again. Even that shot in overtime, you probably like a save, but um, I think we're kind of at the point where we have to expect that from Samsonov. He's no longer the starter for this team, at least not once Joseph Wool's back from injury. So they just kind of have to maintain pace while Joseph Wool's gone. Once he's back, as long as he continues to play the way he played before his injury, this team's going to be fine. The scoring's been unreal. Matthews has been fantastic lately. He's definitely come back to the level we expect him to be at, taking over that best player on the team role from William Nylander, which Willie had for a while early on in the season. But good stuff all in all from the Leafs. They jump 1 spot to number 9. Number 8, I had a tough time jumping this team just 1 spot, but it's Vancouver. They go 3-0 on the week, 7-3-0 in their last 10. So another team with a really strong record in their last 10 games. But these top row in particular and these top 8 to 10 teams have all been on fire lately. So had to move Vancouver just the 1 spot. I couldn't validate them going above the teams that are ahead of them, but all in all, they've been fantastic. Thatcher Demko, I think if I had to pick a favorite for the Vesna, it's probably him to this point. He's just been the heart and soul of this team, aside from Quinn Hughes, of course. But when a goalie's playing that well, it's very hard to beat a team. And Thatcher Demko, I think, up to 3 shutouts on the year. He's had a handful of games where he gives up just 1 goal. When that's happening, it's hard for teams to lose games. Never mind hard to find the point to get to overtime. Like, hard to throw a game away if your goalie's only given up 1 goal. And that's been the case in a lot of games for Thatcher. So big week for the Canucks, 3-0, 7-3 in their last 10. They move up a spot to number 8. Number 7, dropping 4 spots, going 1-2 on the week and 5-4-1 in their last 10 is Florida. Bit of a tough week for these guys. They, of course, get shut out by Vancouver. Just haven't had the same success that they had in previous weeks. Bobrovsky looked a little bit shakier. Um, I'm not, again, overly concerned. They've been playing so well in the weeks leading up to this that I still felt that it was appropriate to have them in this top row. I don't want to see too much of this. And again, you always have that nagging thought in the back of your head where Bobrovsky is like notorious for being one of, if not the most inconsistent yet top level goalies in the NHL. So keeping my fingers crossed that this is just a wobbly week for him. He gets back on track next week, but we have to see that before we can believe it because that's just the history of Sergei Bobrovsky in a nutshell. So they do drop 4 spots from number 3 to number 7. We'll see if they can rebound next week. Number 6, also dropping 4 spots, the formerly unbeatable on the road LA Kings. They're 0-2-1 this week. 6-4-0, or excuse me, 6-3-1 in their last 10. Much of that, though, was, of course, the prior 2 weeks where they were still, unbeatable on the road. This week, they lose 2 road games, one of which against a very tough New York Rangers team, but just hard to keep a team so high up despite how good they've been for so long when the other teams behind them are also performing exceptionally well. So we'll see this in the teams coming up. Not worried about the Kings. Bit of a rough week for them. They're going to rebound. This team has so much depth. I'm really not concerned in the slightest. As long as Cam Talbot stays, healthy and perform well. He did have 1 game this week that I was like, not great, but until that happens a bunch, I'm not overly concerned for Los Angeles. Number 5, one of these teams that's been performing pretty well is Dallas. They move up 2 spots, 5-4-1 in their last 10, 2-1 on the week. A really good effort, nonetheless, against a struggling Senators team last night, but coming back from down 4-2 to get the win despite their starting goalie getting injured early on. So that is a big concern for them. Ottinger hasn't had the numbers that we expected and he had at the beginning of the year where he was just a world beater, but still been pretty good. We need to see if Wedgie can keep them in games, but he's done that so far this year, so not overly worried. But when teams go 2-1 and other teams behind them go 1-2, 0-2-1, jumps are going to happen, especially this high up on the board. So that was exactly the case for Dallas. Very similarly for the team at number 4, which is Winnipeg. They also go 2-1, 6-4-0 in their last 10. And Connor Hellebuck has been very, very good. Laurent Brossoit, despite his struggles earlier in the year, has been much better lately. Again, my biggest concern for this team once they started improving their record pretty dramatically was that Brossoit was not getting them victories when Hellebuck had to rest. That's not been the case lately. He's been much, much better in his last 4 or 5 games. As long as that's the case, this Winnipeg team is going to be fine. They are without Kyle Connor for a bit, so we'll see if their offense can maintain the firepower that they've showed to this point in the season. But frankly, it's not like it's all running through Connor. It's not like they're losing a big number one center. Not that wingers aren't important too, of course, but I think they're still going to be okay without Kyle, even if it's for a relatively prolonged period of time. But time will tell on that one. For now, the Jets do jump 2 spots to number 4. Number 3, also jumping 2 spots, 2-0-1 on the week, 5-4-1 in their last 10. The seemingly undeniable Boston Bruins, who just refuse to go away. I think they're now 19-5-4 on the year. A team that many expected to kind of fall off this season without Bergeron and Krejci. We're now a quarter of the way into the season and then some, and this team's not going anywhere, man. The goaltending, which some may have thought overperformed last season, is still fantastic. Allmark not at the levels he was last year, where he was just like far and away the best goalie in the league, but still very, very good. Jeremy Swayman had a little bit of a wobbly stretch there, but he looked to rebound this week as well. This team just really's got it all going, and it's super frustrating because I'd love to see some new life at the top of the Atlantic. But for now, it's all Boston, and it's really, really hard to take that away from them because they're winning at like a 115 plus point pace, which is just insane. Um, Number 2, though, also jumping 2 spots, 3-1 on the week, 6-1-3 in their last 10 is Vegas. This team that had previously dropped a handful of spots into like the middle to back end of the top row is right back up to where they were at the beginning of the year. The goaltending has been great. Jack Eichel continues to be unreal. Mark Stone really warmed up a bit this season, but all in all, this team just has probably the best depth in the league. There's some other competitors out there. Of course, the number one team is going to have some pretty good depth as well, but I just don't have a lot of flaws in this Vegas team. As long as the goaltending's competitive, they're going to be one of the top teams in the league, and that's been the case all year. So, not really going to harp on what Vegas is doing right because it'll just be the same thing I've said the last 10 or whatever weeks we're on now, 9, 10. Vegas is unreal. They continue to be very, very good. They move up to number 2. Number 1, a 2-2 record, 6-4-0 in their last 10. So not world-beating numbers, but I could not justify having the Rangers below number 1. I know Vegas has been very good, Boston's been good, Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado, all been very good in the Central, but this Rangers team is just so consistent. They did have a bit of a rough game from Shesty this week, which for me was great as a Caps fan, but um, it's not something to be too worried about. His numbers as a whole aren't fantastic, but he still has these games where he's like 35 saves on 37 shots, 38 saves on 39 shots. Jonathan Quick's still been pretty good despite his numbers falling down. Like, this team really doesn't have anything to worry about. Of course, Adam Fox has been back and playing pretty well now, so it's so frustrating as a Caps fan because I would love to see this team fall back a bit and see someone like New Jersey or Philly or like someone take over the top of this division, but it's just not happening for the time being. The Rangers have been so, so good. Again, it's going to take a pretty rough week from them to fall off this number 1 spot. Uh, we'll see if that happens. For now, though, I don't know what team's going to catch them unless they play Vegas and get spanked. So for the time being, this is what we got. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thanks, as always, for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you like these power rankings as well. It is free. I've been doing the daily recaps pretty much every day on YouTube since I think day 25 or so. So my plan is to continue to do that. If you've been enjoying those, make sure you leave a like and interact with those as well. Try to get those powered up through the algorithms. But again, appreciate you guys as always for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.